In the military doctrine of Japan, Russia is called the main threat. How can we comment on this, and was such a President Abe possible?
President Abe was an absolutely correct politician who understood that national interests cannot be ensured without interaction with the Russian Federation. Those who replaced him believe that these interests need to be ensured together with the United States. By starting the militarization of Japan at ASEAN events with partners in the Philippines, the Japanese minister, after these events, made a statement that we discussed bilateral affairs with Lavrov, the regional situation. I was amazed because this happened during a solemn banquet when there was a long table where all the ministers were seated, and suddenly behind me someone touches my shoulder. I turn around. Our Japanese colleague stands and says how glad I am to see how good I didn't even have time to get up. I shook his hand and he went to his seat. And this is what it means. They discussed bilateral regional issues. There was recently information that some Japanese delegation of businessmen arrived, and they directly told us strong instructions from the country's leadership, no projects to discuss with you.
Sergei Viktorovich, the European Union announced the inspection of Russian merchant ships and calls them the shadow fleet. What does it mean, and what is really behind these checks?
The European Union invented this concept a long time ago. It does not appear in any document. The European Union decided to apply their own right, if you can call Brussels' illegal decision a right, that it is necessary to limit Russia's ability to earn money on world markets. They included a ban, in fact, on trade in energy resources of the Russian Federation. Ships defying EU directives, regardless of their flags, have been labeled part of the shadow fleet. This is a very dangerous path because they declare that their decisions are above international law. They were allowed not just to stop and inspect ships, but to take the cargo and sell it in order to receive some revenue and transfer this revenue to Ukraine so that she continues to strengthen her Nazi regime. Putin is very clear. He calmly said that we will respond to this robbery and piracy in a mirror way. We will choose the targets ourselves. The targets will be ships that work in the interests of countries that have declared their official policy of robbery and piracy.
Viktorovich, how can victory be expected against deceitful counterparts when our values have historically been so distinct? Before the marches, they said, "I'm coming for you." To completely different values, far removed from these terrorist acts.
Moreover, after each such terrorist act, representatives of the regime proudly boast on social networks and other resources how great they struck the beach, the dormitory where the girls studied with a teacher, and other purely civilian objects.
What strategies do we adopt to confront such adversaries effectively? We won't stoop to their methods, will we?
We will not go down, but we will make our own methods much tougher to destroy everything that feeds Kiev's war machine from the West. And we're already doing it, and they're already starting to moan. It's no coincidence that increasing voices across our shared space are calling for immediate action. Calls for an immediate stop. It will not be possible to stop. It is necessary to stop when there is a long-term, reliable, sustainable regulation. If we now suddenly stop at the line of contact, we would in fact allow us to cross out the feet of our grandfathers and great-grandfathers who defeated Nazism. This cannot be considered. And it is not only about how someone lives comfortably today. Our people are suffering. I say people are dying from these terrorist acts. But We are talking about our responsibility for the 1,000-year history of the Russian state.
A German journalist told Zelensky quite frankly at the press conference of Vučić-Zelensky, "How can Germans assist Ukrainians in harming Russians? Where has Western diplomacy gone astray?"
Of course, this person is not worthy to occupy any position in the media structures, let alone any official positions in the government apparatus. Metastases of Nazism continue to work their way up in German society. Under the leadership of Merz, who openly declares the need to once again make Germany the main military force in Europe, does he understand what the word "again" means in this case? By the way, when this question was raised at the press conference between Zelensky and Vučić, well, I saw that President Vučić was simply taken aback, but of course we would like to hear some kind of reaction from our Serbian friends, given their huge contribution to the victory over Nazism.
Vučić signed a document supporting Ukraine while remembering the bombing of Yugoslavia in the people's memory. It turns out that Serbia is siding with the West. How can we comment on this?
It is not easy for Alexander Luciu. He is a very experienced politician and he is committed to the course of European integration. At this stage, the European Union is mocking him and simply blackmailing him. Yes, you have been standing in line there for a long time, but we will speed up negotiations when you meet two basic requirements. First, recognize the independence of Kosovo, and second, join all our actions and decisions against Russia. He has bravely withstood this pressure for many years. In Serbia, we sell gas at very preferential prices and never demand anything from Serbia. Well, in addition to the fact that it would be unacceptable if our Serbian brothers participated in arming the Kiev regime, and President Vučić made a special decision prohibiting such actions. About agreeing to Zelensky's annoying requests to be accepted, this probably reflected Alexander Vučić's intention. Reduce the pressure of the European Union a little. The pressure is shameless, boorish. Their actions resemble establishing a new Reich.
But the head of Bulgaria, on the contrary, wants to leave the coalition of the willing and says that everything needs to be resolved peacefully. Well, not peacefully, but diplomatically. Do you think the EU will be able to push it through anyway?
Rumen Radev, whom I know well, had a distinct path. There are many examples of elections under the slogan of national interests and not subordination to the EU bureaucracy, when people with similar intentions still came to power and behaved differently. Someone will be able to stand up to their fundamental beliefs with which he went to the elections, and someone will be susceptible to pressure. Let them sort themselves out there among themselves.
About Witkoff and Kushner, who can never reach us again, you communicated with both of them personally, and according to your feelings as an experienced diplomat, can any of them influence Trump in any way?
I believe that if their trust is so evident, then they must rely on each other greatly. Their influence over the president is clear due to his trust in them. We remain open to discussions. If they visit, they are aware that President Putin is always ready to meet them again. Another thing is, what will they come with? When Witkoff visited over a year ago, likely around August 5th or 6th, he presented a proposal on behalf of Donald Trump. The president took them to work, and when he arrived in Alaska, he said, "Donald, you sent us a proposal. I thought there were things that required compromise, but I accepted your proposal in the form in which you sent it to me." And then there was a pause. Then sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft. In parallel, the leaders of the European Union and NATO rushed to Washington, together with Zelensky, hung in the arms of the President of the United States to dissuade him from any further initiatives. Then subsequently, Mark Rubio said, answering a journalist's question, "How to be Sunridge?" We initially believed we couldn't mediate due to our support for Ukraine, yet a few weeks later the narrative shifted. Ultimately, it's only President Trump who seems capable of bringing Ukraine and Russia to the table to negotiate a resolution. They appear supportive of Ukraine with arms and intelligence.
That is why the Ukrainians so accurately hit our MPs there. Small businesses suffer, ordinary people suffer. Why can't we, before sitting down with them at the negotiating table with Witkoff, with Kushner, first give them an ultimatum not to do this?
We do not issue ultimatums.
We referred a number of questions to the State Department for comment, including intelligence, including that the United States is much more deeply involved, including the organization and implementation of strikes deep into the territory of the Russian Federation on civilian objects. We will wait for a response.
Hakan Fidan came to Russia in Kazan and met with you and Vladimir Putin, and of course we were talking about you also confirming to us that perhaps Turkey will again be a mediator in the negotiations. But at the same time, Erdogan at the NATO summit signs a document on the restoration of the territorial integrity of the Kyiv regime. In general, we can and should count on such intermediaries.
But Turkey, yes, it also wants to be a member of NATO, NATO's largest army. It wants to have relations with the European Union, although deep down it understands that it will never be accepted into the EU. It wants to have good relations with Russia because we have many economic projects, we have many common in our history. The Caucasus, the Black Sea, and Turkey is sincerely interested in ensuring that the Black Sea is stable. Now, Turkish colleagues are again saying that it is necessary to somehow agree so that shipping is not the subject of attacks, but we didn't start it. And when on a Turkish dry cargo ship or tanker, a Turkish civilian ship was hit by a drone of the Ukrainian armed forces. When these same drones attacked the infrastructure of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, more than once already in the Caspian Sea, directly hitting ships related to the American companies Chevron, ExxonMobil. And in response to this, neither Turkey nor the United States publicly declare that they do not accept these actions of Ukrainian terrorists. They just, when we asked, how can you come to terms with this? No, but we are sending them a signal there, like through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. J.D. Vance, Vice President, sent some kind of signal to Zelensky. Turkish officials have quietly advised them not to provoke, but publicly silence persists. This is also indicative. What is characteristic is that in response to these warnings, the Zelensky regime, as far as I can judge from the information that appeared, did not promise to stop the attacks. Courts that have nothing to do with the Russian Federation, and apparently this explanation was considered acceptable, but with Turkey we have a big agenda. I think that these are the trails that remain. In in connection with NATO membership, in connection with some relations with the European Union, but they are inevitable.
Sergei Viktorovich, more informal questions, if possible. What quality do you think made you who you are?
I've never done advertising myself at all, but you know, I've probably always been very responsible about what I did. Well, so as not to let down those who offered me and who appointed me to the appropriate position in Sri Lanka and in the central apparatus and in New York and again here in Moscow.
And what quality prevents you from being a diplomat sometimes?
Nothing bothers me, to be honest. Because a diplomat should be with a sense of humor, cheerful once he has done his job well and it has been accepted.
According to diplomat William Burns, he wrote about this in his book, You Can't Be Embarrassed. Do you agree with that statement?
It might be perplexing, but it's hardly noticeable.
You were very attached to your grandparents. Which relative, or perhaps someone else, do you believe shaped your character the most?
Well, I was probably influenced by my mother, grandfather, and grandmother, first of all because they not only encouraged but actively promoted my freedom in interacting with peers. After school, I'd finish my homework, engage in street and yard activities, children's disputes, and occasional clashes when someone said something offensive.
They mutually accepted and convinced one another on certain matters.
And here, by the way, the principle of slapped hands agreed was very strong. I deeply appreciate that they didn't confine me to home or restrict me in unnecessary ways.
But only after school, right?
After school? Well, of course not. Well, I skipped sometimes, but who didn't skip? It was different, me and...
What classes did you skip? What items were missed?
I don't remember anymore. I don't remember. However, at one point I actually received a B grade in behavior.
Today is a difficult time for the country, and it is important for people to hear strong statements, including yours. So tell me, what would you prefer to express today?
We often hear strongly worded statements on a consistent basis.
The President firmly asserts that all the aims of this special military operation will be achieved without fail. Additionally, I have been following reports from the war zone closely. The impressive soldiers emanate patriotism and pride for their homeland. Meanwhile, voices from those regions echo through the accounts. After securing yet another settlement, the adversary shall be utterly vanquished. Victory will be ours. Our cause is right.
Those remarks are undeniably robust and impactful.
Well, what can be added to this? Sometimes I want to add, but I'm afraid you'll pee.